Thanks very much, Lena, and welcome to this session on Altmetrics and altmetric.com. I'm just going to share my screen. Hold on a moment. I just want to share my whole desktop just in case. You see all kinds of funny things coming up here for a minute. Just in case I need to hop out and go there. So hopefully you can see my screen now. And so we're going to talk about Altmetrics and altmetric.com. And welcome everybody. Thank you for your interest in this area. This is an area that's getting a lot more attention now, that we're starting to get more interest in alternative ways of reporting on research. I'm going to suggest to you today that you don't look on Altmetrics as a kind of a tool for giving you information solely, that you're going to look at it as a strategic tool for learning about the network that are interested in you and your work, or maybe that of your group or your school, and using that information to enhance that impact on that network. So in the session, we're going to cover a bit about altmetric.com, and then, so that's the tool that we subscribe to in Trinity to help us with Altmetrics. I'll give you the login and the introduction to it. We look at the edit screen search and ORCID search. So you all know about ORCID. Hopefully you've all got your ORCID IDs. How to save a search and rename it and look at what we see. Thinking about Trinity in ORCID and how it's, that should be Trinity in altmetric.com, I beg your pardon, and what to do with the information, how to increase your Altmetric impact, and a word about Overton, which is a different kind of altmetric information. So we're using altmetric.com. We'll talk about another tool at the very end of this called Overton. About altmetrics then. So they're also known as next generation metrics, and this is the generic term for these next generation metrics. It's called altmetrics. So that is about attention to research outputs in what we would call non-traditional sources, like policy documents, news, blogs, social media, some indicators of research impact. They're just indicators. And they'll help us to understand how research is being received and used. And the idea is that it's complementary to traditional citation-based analyses. And here's an idea of where the traditional bibliometrics, we're all familiar with the citation counts, H-index, numbers of publications, and so on, the traditional and many more in that area. The alternative metrics will give us this idea of the broader attention, mentions in news reports, policy papers, social media, Wikipedia citations, which are really interesting. You know, they're really interesting example of how your work is referenced. In fact, I believe that the University of Edinburgh has actually hired a Wikipediatrician to actually ensure that their research is actually properly referenced in Wikipedia. It's a kind of an impact, a reference manager and various different readers and so on. So when we ask the question about why would we be using this, the idea would be to provide a more coherent understanding of research attention. And it is about research. It's not about your other activities. You know, if you could be doing wonderful charitable work and engagement, putting, you know, on lectures, public lectures in various different locations. That's not going to get picked up here. This is purely research, and it's very much based on your publications, and it's a different way of looking at how your publications are greeted and mentioned in a range of other media. So it can help you to understand the broader reach and especially early impact of research. And it's so important for early career researchers. As you all know, it takes a while for publications to get that kind of impact. With Altmetrics, you'll start to see altmetric information appearing very quickly, and especially if you follow, I've got a strategy that I'll suggest at the very end of this that you might like to think about applying. So it'll also help you to track attention to a broad range of research outputs, including articles and posters and data sets and working papers, and it helps researchers to get credit for these impact activities. So the advantages then for single research outputs would be that you get real-time immediate feedback on attention to scholarly content. Very useful, as I mentioned, for early career researchers whose work might not have accrued citations yet. You know, it's very rare to get citations in the first 6 months after publication. For example, you can already start to get the altmetric information. And we see from the London School of Economics Impact blog, where they've done research that shows that targeted tweets can drive citations to your work. So you can use altmetric information and the bibliometrics in parallel, and you can use one to feed the other. We'll take a look at that later as well. It'll help you to showcase attention to a particular research output beyond academia, and it's not biased by a single overarching metric. It's a whole bundle of, or basket of metrics. So we've talked about just a very quick overview of altmetrics in general, and we could put a whole lot of other things under altmetrics, like open science or open research metrics, the here hits and downloads and all kinds of other things like that. We could talk about those another time. This time we're going to look specifically at this tool at altmetric.com. So these people from digital science who are part of that Nature, Springer Nature group and Macmillan and so on, they actually the biggest academic publishers in the world, they are also the home of altmetric.com, a particular tool. And you'll recognize this tool. You'll have seen this on publishers' websites and various different other locations. This is the altmetric.com donut. Those colors mean something, and they cover, there's the meaning of them, policy documents, news stories is the red, Twitter/X is the blue, and so on. We find, and they have LinkedIn in there. They don't have Instagram, interestingly, yet, but we're working on them in relation to that. And we have a way to go with TikTok, but our research talk. But they're covering all of this at the moment, and they're covering them very well. So here's a few examples. This particular output has a whole lot of mainstream media coverage. So that's our news. There's our news red. And this one has a lot of blog attention. We can see that with the yellow in there. This one has received a lot of attention on Twitter. And has a post-publication peer review forum. So we can tell from the donut, you don't have to guess this. You can click on the donut wherever you see it on a publisher website or in other locations. You might find it, for example, on Tara. So here's an example of a paper. So we've embedded the Altmetric widget, so it's free, that we've embedded it. In fact, you can embed it on any web pages on our blogs, and you can put this information in there, and it's live, so with this particular paper, we see that it's already started to accrue its altmetric data, and the next time you go back to it, that figure will have changed. You can click on that and you get to the altmetric page, which provides you with all the information about this resource. This is a different resource. You can go in immediately and have a look at where are those news stories coming from, where are the blogs, where's the policy documents, and so on. And this is where the strategy comes in. This is where you just find the information and say, I've been, my work has been mentioned by X number of news sources and, policy documents. You apply your analytics to this, and you start figuring out who are these people who are interested in my work. You follow them, you make contact with them, you note who they are and what's paying attention to your work, and you build your strategy around that information. So the altmetric attention score, you'll see that figure, the number in the middle, that's their attention score, and that's made up of volume. The score for the article rises the more people mention it, or news stories and so on. The sources, so there's a different source category, contributes to a different base amount to the final score. And then authors, how often the author of each mention talks about scholarly articles influences the contribution of the mention as well. So it'll tell you this kind of information, like, as you could see, what kind of attention the research is receiving, where the article has received the most traction, which countries are engaging the most with the content, has the article influenced policy, spurred new research, or engaged a new audience. Also, are the reactions to this article positive or negative? So you can tell that, with citations as well. Presumably you have citation alerts set up in the usual sources, Web of Science, Scopus, etc. You can also set up alerts, and I'll show you how to do that within this for your own and a constant updating report for yourself and for your work in this as well. What altmetric.com won't tell you is anything about the quality of the paper, the quality of the researchers, and the whole story. So we're not claiming that it's going to do any of these things. It's just going to provide you with the information that I mentioned already. So, and here's some information on the news outlets and the social media and the blogs and so on. We have used altmetric.com in Trinity to support and always alongside and being very careful about this to support various bids or proposals of different kinds. We know that HRB and SFI, for example, are moving away from the traditional metrics. So we won't give it in terms of metrics. We'll talk about the attention that the work is getting, you know, sort of alongside the other kinds of impacts that the work might have. So these are the kind of sources, as I mentioned already, so that we get. So Altmetric.com assure us that they're very keen on tackling gaming and they take it very seriously. So this is countering one of the arguments that a lot of people, especially people who aren't all that, you know, comfortable with social media, will say, sure, social media is just people writing about what they're having for lunch and you know, how slow the bus is, and it's not really serious, and also it can be gamed really well. Why can't you get all your friends to go and retweet your work? Well, they have, you know, methods of being able to tackle that kind of thing, so they don't count your friends and your followers from your normal media, and they look for these different areas of what they call promiscuity, bias, and reach, and they have definitions of all of those on their web pages. So we're going to move ahead then, having done our little intro to that, and I'm going to give you a list at the end of this session on a whole lot more information and videos and so on that you can find out more and go into more depth if you want to find out more about how this works, you know, sort of, and where they're getting the information from and so on. But let's take a look in a practical way at using altmetric.com. So first of all, you can do this now and follow me on this if you like. What you can do is you can follow this link, and obviously I'll make the slides available as well as this being recorded, and Lena will circulate them. So there's a link, but it's really Altmetric Explorer. So if you Google Altmetric Explorer, you'll get a link up that'll say, and it'll ask you for your username and password. Put in your TCD email address and then make up a password, right? So a password of your choice. Probably don't put in your TCD password, because obviously IT services wouldn't be happy about that. So come up with some other one for yourself. When you first log in, and we'll have a look at this, you'll see the analytic highlights for Altmetric data associated with TCD publications. And what we've done, thanks very much to Kevin Kiley, many of you will know Kevin, he's our wonderful secret weapon within the RSS, within Research IT. So we've done a data exchange from the RSS to altmetric.com, and that allows us to show a view of Trinity publications. Now, it's not infallible. We're going to put it like that. A lot depends on, have people got their publications in the RSS? Have they have their publications got DOIs and so on? We're not stuck with that. We can go outside and do a full search and forget about the TCD publications. We just provide that because it's kind of a nice handy way for us to be able to get a quick overview. And I'll show you another thing that Kevin has done. He's also integrated the RSS from the point of view of the faculty and the schools. So you can go in and individuals, so you can go into altmetric.com and you can look up Trinity and the breakdown and get quick reports. So I'll mention that later on, and the fact that we're going to do an update on that fairly soon. So it's a little bit out of date at the moment. So we're going to go in and take a look at this in a minute. You can expand your searches by toggling to the full database, and you can see my institution. I'm going to show you this stuff, right? So if some of you are in Altmetric Explorer now, and we're going to go in, and I've just done some slides because it's easier to do that. So when you Google Altmetric Explorer, you get the screen, you go in to sign in, and if you haven't registered already, you can go in and, as I said, sign in with your TCD username and your password of choice, and then you'll get to this screen. So the first screen, this particular screen here, this is what you see, and it's all kind of live and interactive. It's a very intuitive interface, and it really invites exploration. So I'm going to invite you to do that, is to hover around, look for Trinity. You're going to see a lot of publications from the Faculty of Health Sciences right on the top of the top outputs for Trinity here, because of the nature of the work itself. So health sciences in general is very fruitful for this area. We see a lot of hits and mentions. Overall for Trinity, we're seeing just right at the moment, we see total mentions 65, nearly 66,000, and these are the outputs with attention. So a lot of they track a whole lot of outputs, but not all of those outputs have attention. Attention means they've got a mention in a news source or something like that, and they're tracking tracking all of these different outputs to keep an eye on them for us. So so these are all the mentions. These are the outputs. Sorry, these are the outputs that they've tracked, and this is the numbers that have attention. A reasonably high proportion of Trinity research outputs, possibly a surprising number, actually have mentions in altmetric.com. So we're going to have a look at, so this page, if you go into it in the live version, you'll see things like these. This is for Trinity, most mentioned by, and our comms office, and communications office and our communication partners use Altmetric because it's updated very regularly. We'll see this in a moment, and you can see what are the sources that are mentioning our work. And this is part of our strategy as well, is find out what are the sources. This is overall for Trinity, I'm saying. And again, just to show you parts of this screen, on the first screen, you can go in and edit the search, and that's where you might go and search for yourself, or you might build a search for your group. You might have a bunch of, and this is one of my favorite searches, and Monica's, and others who work with me, people, obviously Bridget in the School of Medicine, and Luciana in the School of Nursing and Midwifery. We will use this. We'll go in, we'll collect the digital object identifiers for the works of a group, for example, and we can just sling them all in here and see what the outputs are. I'll show you that in a minute. So that's going in and editing the search. Save searches go in here, so you can save any search and you can run a report, share it with your colleagues if you want to, keep it for yourself, get it emailed to yourself. That's under the save searches. And then I mentioned that Trinity units and people are here under that little portico that's there. So that's where we've done our data exchange. So let's go in and take a look at what we see on the rest of that page. So if we go into the first screen, we saw that we have our top outputs that appear. And I'm just going into the rest of it. Going down the screen, we can scroll down to them all. We can see what journals are getting us the most. This is overall for Trinity again. What journals are getting us the most numbers of mentions and hits. The top affiliations with our mentions, the top subject areas. Here's the latest news stories that we can see. Latest mentioned in 16 hours ago. I took this earlier this morning at around 9 o'clock or so. So we can see, so this is why comms are really interested in this area, because it gives us the very latest mentions on social media, on news stories, etc. And you can click in and you can see all the news highlights and all the mentions here. So already you're getting an idea. This is a very powerful tool. There's more. Down at the bottom of the page, you can get an overview. You can show by region or by country all the mentions and the distribution of the scores. So when you get this information at 9 o'clock, it said this overview was updated about 6 hours previously. The next update will run in 18 hours. Okay, so that's how up to date it is. If we click on the edit screen, remember I went and go back here and I'll show you, there's the edit search. If we click on edit, we see a screen like this, and you can go in and you can change the search. First of all, we're clicking on the full Altmetric database. If we wanted to, we could search within our own institution, but I would never do that. I've never used that particular search. I'm always searching the full Altmetric database. I want to know who's using our research out there. So there's a whole lot of different options that you can put in to this, including the affiliation if we want to do that. But the ones that I use most often are down at the bottom of the page. And those are the ORCID, so you're going to have an ORCID number, or if you could have this one here, the identifiers. So that is so I've already put in a whole lot of DOIs on this. So, and you can configure the dates, publication date, and the other dates. So there. So this isn't right. This is an example of what happens if you don't clear your search, which I've done. I put in Ryan O'Connell as our Dean of Health Sciences. So I put in his information, but I didn't actually clear the search, right? So there's a clear the search. So you need to clear any previous searches that have gone on. So even with that search, I will see some information. I put in Brian's ORCID ID for that, and I've got some mentions already amongst this data set that I'm looking at. So I immediately see for Brian, and you can do this for yourself, the top outputs, the social media hits, the policy and patents database, and you can click into all of these. And the full page, like the first page that I showed you, but this time it's for an individual. So you can also look along the top here and you'll see these are the highlights. So that's the first page. You can click on the research outputs and you'll see how the individual research outputs are doing. You'll get a timeline, demographics, and various different other pieces of information about this. So it takes time and it's really worth doing. You can also drill into the policies and patent mentions and all of the other ones too. So let's have a closer look. Here's before we do that, I wanted to mention the save search. I pointed out over there. If I save that search for Brian, it tells me that it's saved, and I can come back in here and check that save search. Let me have a look at the save search immediately. So the save search, when you save it, you can see I've got a whole bunch of things. You can see what I've been up to recently in Altmetrics. There's all kinds of things for the provost and visits to China. We're tracking our collaborations and what kind of sort of attention that they're getting in various different centers and so on. There's the E3 cohort we'll be talking about later on today. So this is going to be the latest one. Just says that. So I'm going to go in. I would use the edit button to change it and to say my name or Brian's name on this. I can schedule daily, weekly, or monthly or emails to myself updating me on what my Altmetric scores are. I can download one for myself straight away. And it'll all be very nicely laid out and I can share it. I can send it to other people as well. So it's quite a lot of functionality here. And you can do this kind of analysis and then save it. And then you can just get your report every now and again, which is kind of a nice thing to have. When you've done that, go back to your search, use the back button on your browser and explore your results. Have a look and don't just do this once, but kind of do it on a regular basis. Go in and analyze what's going on with your research from the Altmetric point of view. So as I said, these are the research outputs. I'm looking at this, this menu bar along the top here, and I've clicked on research outputs. So these would be Brian's research outputs that I'm looking at here. I could look in and I can go and drill into each one of them and find out where the news stories and the tweets and so on are coming on, as well as having the overview. So this is a timeline for everybody. You can see with altmetric.com, it's new. So we're not going to see a massive amount. They're doing a little bit back in the distant past, sorry, of where are we going to? Just a moment, I'll just go back to this one here. Back in the distant past of 2004, 2006, they are actually trying to track some of these things, and those are mostly news stories that you're looking at, but you're really going to be looking at this kind of more recent area. You can click into any of those bars and immediately get into, the tweets and the information about the tweets, and you can see who's doing the tweeting. I'm still calling it a tweet, by the way, as you can see, and there's the news stories, etc. You can click on the demographics. Here's this bit. I'm still on the horizontal bar along here, and you can see a word map for each one of the sections for social media, for example, for news, which is great. You can see the spread of news stories. We find that people are often really surprised at this information, that they don't know necessarily even about the policy documents that are citing their work or about the news stories and especially if you see a story that has actually been syndicated in the US news, you can see all the radio stations and so on and it's very interesting to see it, but it's also worthwhile being aware of this. You become more aware of the audience of your work, and I should mention of the potential societal impact of that work. So again, we've got, and you can analyze the particular mentions that you have. You can see some of them are in Chinese and in Russian and various different other languages, but most of them are in English. And then you can analyze the journals and see where the hits are coming from in relation to that, and if the journals are working for you as well as they should. So that's the results. If you go back to the highlights screen, so that's the main page, you can analyze your individual outputs. If you remember, you could see a bar that said social media, news, and so on. And you can click into each one of those. You can click into the individual research outputs. And this is one from Brian that was mentioned by a news outlet and a Twitter user. You can see what news sources mention your work. And this is, again, the strategic part. Who are the bloggers? Who are the tweeters? If we were our own children, we would be very aware of influencers in the area that we are interested in, our areas of interest. Are we aware of the influencers in our field of studies globally? So we may be aware of some of them, and even the term influencer in a research environment isn't something that we often talk about, but we can go in, we can analyze all of these, and we can then get strategic. We can, maybe we're not interested in everybody who's tweeting about our work, but there may be some people that we're interested in. And one of the things that this does down the Twitter breakdown, which will give us a demographic breakdown, it'll actually tell us the percentage of tweeters who are they calling them ex-users, who are members of the public, who are practitioners of various kinds, who are science communicators. So we can break down our social media in that way. Just a little bit more. So I'm going to give you a little bit of kind of strategy on this. And this is something that I just did. Update your publications in ORCID, or find a list of the DOIs of your publications and copy it. So you can go into Scopus as a source. So we use both of those. And that's the easiest way to use. Go in and you edit your search. First of all, update your publications, and then put in your ORCID or your list. You can dump in, I think they allow you to put in something like 20,000 PubMed IDs or DOIs or various different other ISBNs, and you can put them all in together, sort of in a batch, and it figures out, it recognizes which are the individual outputs. Log into Altmetric Explorer, which we just looked at the top of the page, edit search. Tick the box if it's not already ticked, and it should have ticked it. Sorry, this is coming up all the time. Tick the box full Altmetric database, enter your ORCID in the ORCID entry box, or just paste your list of DOIs or digital object identifiers or other identifiers in the box that's called scholarly identifiers. You don't have to process them, as I said, you don't have to put them on separate lines or anything like that. Click save, then run search. And remember to clear any previous searches that you've done before. Click run search, click on save your search, and then click save searches on the left-hand side. You can rename it, export your search, and schedule daily, weekly, monthly email updates, just as we've seen. Okay, so what am I going to, something else that I was going to say in relation to that, just with the, in relation to the DOIs, as I've mentioned, that this is very useful if you want to analyze the work of a group of people. So you can go in and search in Scopus or in another database for the digital object identifiers of for all the publications that people in your group have created. You can export a CSV file from Scopus, and you'll find a column with all the DOIs in it. And then you can copy that and just plonk it into the DOI box, the scholarly identifiers box in the Altmetric Explorer edit search box, and then you get your results. So I was going to mention about, I'm going a little bit quickly in this because I want to leave some time for some questions, and also Lena would like to finish up a little bit early, and I think it would suit us all to do that. So with altmetric.com, as I mentioned, Kevin has done a data exchange with the research support system, and we're waiting, and we're just finishing off the current updating process. You'll all have been busy putting your publications into and other information into the RSS. I know when that process is done, we're running the reports now. And after that's done, we'll do a data exchange, another data exchange with altmetric.com. And over here, we'll see the results of this, the TCD units and people. So you need to take this with a little grain of salt at the moment because it's not up to date, but we'll let you know through Lena when it is updated. But you can use this to get an idea of what's going on generally up until we last updated it last year, late last year. So when we click on that, the portico, just go back there because I did it quickly, that one there. So we can go in, and here's a list of people's names. Go in and click and find your own name and see what's going on there straight away without having to do any search. You can also click on the departments, and departments means any of the TCD units. So as I mentioned, last update was last year. We'll be doing a next RSS exchange soon. So for the Faculty of Health Sciences. I might have just got this slightly out of sync. Let me just check and see. Yeah. So if we click on the, I think it's a little bit backwards. Hold on a minute. Okay. So we can click in and we can see the Faculty of Health Sciences there. And we can click on the Faculty of Health Sciences and get the information, altmetric.com information for the whole of the Faculty of Health Sciences. Or we can click on it for dental sciences, medicine, nursing and midwifery, and pharmacy and pharmaceutical sciences. So here's for the whole Faculty of Health Sciences, we can see all of the information that I showed you already. So here's the highlights, the highlights page you can have a look at. These are the research outputs. So you can see the research outputs that are getting the most attention. Maybe that's not telling us a huge amount, but we can go in and have a look and see, get an idea of what's getting the news stories and so on. That's interesting at the faculty level, and also at the level of individual researchers. In this view of it, you can also look at the timeline, the demographics as we looked at. Those are the world maps with the news stories and so on, the mentions and the sources. And of course, you can click into any of these areas and the journals. So we can see out of around 14,000 research outputs from the faculty, nearly 8,000 of them have been mentioned, and we can analyze those mentions and so on. So that's, we can also click into the individual schools. And we can see here's dental sciences. So we can see that we have these, again, quite a variation in the different kind of mentions that are there. Medicine and nursing and midwifery. And we can also, I should mention that the Cochrane database of systematic reviews is also included in this. And the School of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Science is very interesting to see all the COVIDs. It's very interesting to see the way that the news stories switch and change over time. So, so that's our breakdown. So that's a quick and dirty way into having a look at the what's going on from Altmetrics from the point of view of Trinity, the faculty, and the individual schools. You already know how to analyze your own work. You can go in and do it. And I do urge you to use this tool. We have used it, as I say, for many different sources, including for, you know, when people, I remember when Mary McCarran got her Impact Award from HRB, we were able to use altmetric.com quite a lot to kind of support that profile that was being put forward to underpin that award. When Roseanne Kenny was putting in for a particular proposal to HRB, we found policy mentions in altmetric.com that she wasn't aware of. I hope Roseanne doesn't mind me saying this. And I think we've talked about this quite a lot. So this is all about learning more about the reach of our research. And it's very difficult to do that now with the sheer amount of noise out there and all the work we have to do and the paperwork. So this is a relatively easy way for us to get a good handle on what, and as I say, it doesn't cover everything. It's not going to cover your, lectures to members of the public or visits to schools and so on. There are other ways of doing that. If you want to track social media sentiment, then what's the general impact of news about Trinity? Then talk to your comms partner about that, and they'll be able to support you to find out that information. This is purely about research and associated with research publications. And that's what we're tracking. You can see it with the ORCID and the DOI. That's what we're looking at here. So very quickly, what to do with altmetric information. So once you've got it, so lots of researchers are using it, obviously, to track information to your research, uncover maybe unknown conversations about your work, and using grant applications and fund reporting carefully. Obviously, we don't overdo the metrics, so we don't overdo the figures. What we use is the information, particularly in this narrative CV environment that we're in at the moment. Librarians use it to support researchers and to enhance department liaison, to encourage staff to deposit in our research information system. Administrators in our friends and colleagues in the research office will be using it to integrate data and maybe into performance reports or identify key impacts across the institution, maybe careful benchmarking. And then comms are using it to identify research to promote and evaluate the success of promotion activities, because I'll come back to this in a minute, and then identify researchers who are getting attention and contact them. So Altmetrics for you, for example, you can use it to showcase the wider influence of a piece of your work. Obviously, I know you're going to use Altmetrics responsibly, and we recommend that we provide context and that the metrics must be appropriate, and that we use it with care. So, and provide this context. So that basically means that Altmetrics provides, it shows the percentiles, it shows the relationships and how the metrics compare to other research in the same journal, for example. And so it's not just providing a figure for a journal like a impact factor, which we know is now deprecated. We're not using that kind of uncontextualized information anymore. It's used to uncover, this is an example, conversations about your research. So here's that image that I showed you before and that you can analyze like that, and discover policy references. So this would be Cochrane Library paper investigated the use of probiotics to treat eczema. So we can see the paper had a relatively low score of attention, but received a lot of mentions across policy documents in Wikipedia. So, and more policy documents that you can see. You can discover popular new content to read and new audiences as well, and use, as I say, with care in grant applications and funder reporting. And to find potential collaborators as well. So here's looking at Twitter. You can see there's the list of people. I mean, this is is strategic information if you analyze it for your work. So increasing your Altmetric score, I'll mention this briefly. So there's all kinds of ways that you know about already to attract attention to your work. And here are some of them that altmetric.com have suggested. Some of them that you know, I'm going to highlight a few. Registered for an ORCID ID, absolutely. Make your work available in open access wherever possible. If you put it into Tara, please do put it into Tara as well as making it open access any other way, because you actually get even more hits from Tara. We optimize the metadata to go up to the top of the Google page when people are looking for it. And that is backed up by research, and that the more citations come from the repositories. Work with the press office, include links to your work in your email signature and your ORCID and so on. Reach out to your bloggers and the other information, and use Altmetric for that. Upload, make your data, your images, posters and other files available, and so on, right? How to make sure that Altmetric picks up mentions of your work, because probably one of the first things that you'll notice, apart from going, oh, look, that's interesting, I didn't know that these people were interested in my work, is going, where's the rest of my work, and why isn't it all being covered? Make sure that you always link. If you're doing some work, make sure that anything that you put out about your work, it links to your researcher's unique identifier. That's a DOI or an archive IV or a PubMed ID. So that's really important. The link has to be in the main body of any post that you put in, and Altmetric needs to be tracking the source that mentions the work. Now, we are in contact with Altmetric, so if there is a source, and by that we mean a journal or a policy source, a government body or a policy source that isn't being picked up and that you know about it, please contact us and let us know, and we'll tell them to include that so that you will be improving the resource. Here's a little strategy that I worked out just for you, just in the last hour or so. Use Altmetric to find and engage with your Altmetric network, and that's all your tweeters and bloggers and so on. And then when you publish or make a conference presentation or any other kind of work that you're going to be doing, tweet/X or use other social media to make sure that you put it out there. So again, I'm going to go back to that London School of Economics impact blog research on how the targeted use of Twitter can drive citations to your work. You can also drive art. This isn't gaming. This is publicizing your work. There's nothing wrong with it. It's getting your work to people who want to know about it, like open access. Make sure that if you're tweeting or using social media, that you include a DOI to the version of record with your post, but also add the open access link, the version of your work. So if you've deposited something in Tara, put that on it as well, because you want to reach a wider audience. And if you're putting it out on social media, we want people to cite your work from the DOI, and you want them to access your work as well. And then you're going to track the results. So that's basically it. Here's a link to the resource library. That the link is down there at the bottom, so you can learn more about altmetric.com and how it's used. And before I go, quick word about Overton, and I'm going to suggest to Lena that maybe we should actually have a particular a specialized webinar about Overton itself. So Overton is a new resource. It could come under Altmetrics with a small a instead of altmetric.com. It's a tool that we have, and I know that Lena and your Dean of Health Sciences alerted the faculty that SAGE publications are making individual Overton profiles available for free. So, but we also have access to the full Overton tool in Trinity. And I've got a link on how you can sign up for that. It's very similar to altmetric.com. You use your TCD email address and put in your own password. This is where you really get this. This is dedicated to policy documents. And you can find the most extraordinary information about it. We don't have time to go into this at the moment, but what I'm going to suggest is that you go in, sign up for it, browse the data, use your ORCID or search for yourself in it, and have a look at what's going on and search by the your own subject area. Here's an example. If you're searching by scholarly articles, I looked for authors from Trinity College Dublin, found all of this information. Again, we're seeing our Faculty of Health Sciences featuring very strongly in these policy documents. You can see who, what government agencies, what think tanks, what intergovernmental organizations are referencing your work. And you can see what journals they're accessing too. So again, I'm suggesting this as a strategic tool. You can export your work too. You can see all these are articles from authors in Trinity College Dublin that have been cited by policy documents, and again from all over the world. And we can see the journals and so on. And just before I go with this is how to access Overton, the information. Contact us for more information. And just before I leave it, again, the wonderful Kevin Kiley has actually integrated Overton into the RSS. So you'll be able to see the link to that very soon. So you'll be able to see the Overton relating to yourself, to your school, to your institute, or whatever within the RSS very shortly too. So I'm going to leave you with that. Thank you very much for your attention. We might have a couple of minutes left for any queries. I'm going to have a quick look into the chat as well to see if there's anything there. And as we
Thanks,
are
Niamh.
just a bit short of time, please do follow up with me if you got any queries, or send it to Lena.
I set the session up as a meeting to allow a little bit of kind of in person, if you like, Q&A. So if anybody wants to ask a question, you can just click on your camera and ask it verbally. And we had planned to stay on a bit later, but the provost then announced her session. So she's on straight after us at 12 o'clock, I think. So I'm sure most staff will want to go and listen to that. But there's about 5 minutes or so if anyone has any questions.
I hope I wasn't going too fast.
I think.
Hi, Niamh. Thank you for the presentation. Can I ask you a question? You were saying that Altmetrics may be useful for early career researchers because it takes less time to see your figures, and whereas citations for traditional publications take longer. But I was wondering if you know when Altmetrics reach their peak. So because it's social media, is it possible that you get high numbers very quickly and then it plateaus after, say, 2 months?
I think it very much depends, Luciane. I mean, it's a brilliant question. And you really only begin to understand that by analysing, say, your own work. So everybody's work, you could see when we looked at the School of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences, for example, we could see, and if we looked at the timeline, we're going to see a massive amount of attention around certain research outputs associated with COVID, you know, and some of those are still getting a lot of attention. So we really need to analyze it. And, you know, we know ourselves, some of our research takes longer to start getting attention. Others will start getting it very quickly. A lot depends on, let's say, for example, if you have spoken at a conference, it's a major conference in your area, and you have tweeted about it, and you've put in the DOI to your research as well, then you're going to start to see a lot of activity going on because the conference delegates are going to start tweeting about that. And you can track that and you can find out what they're saying about it and so on. So that's a really good thing. So you'll see immediate impact from that. that's why I'm suggesting that people kind of take ownership of it. This is not a passive tool, you know, that when you learn about how your research is working, maybe you can try and see if you can get more interest in your work earlier on. If you can try and see where the news stories go, where they picked up from different, you know, syndicators and so on. And of course, you can work with your comms individual to partner to try and figure this out. But unfortunately, it is kind of, it's very dependent on the research itself, Luciana. I don't think there's a peak, but we can certainly see some major news stories coming out of some of our research, particularly in this faculty.
Thank you.
Thanks, Luciana.
Niamh, I think that brings us just up on 10 to 12 when we said we might finish, unless Sarah, I just see your camera has come on. Have you got a question?
Please, thanks a
there.
million, Lena, and thanks a million, Niamh. That was really helpful because I'd sort of heard about it and now I've signed up and I've looked as because that's the way I learn. So really useful. So just 2 points of clarification. One, is it like all of these things, just the more time? Because I tried to do a few of the things you suggested and some of them worked and some of them didn't as you were talking. So is it just about spending time with it and getting to know it and investing in it?
Yeah, you know, it's, I mean, and it is pretty intuitive. It's not, you know, sort of one of the more difficult kind of resource to use. You're getting interesting information on every screen that you look at. So it is a question of, you know, navigating it and finding your way around. I'd suggest just going in there and, you know, clicking on things and seeing what comes up for yourself, you know, and following them through, clicking through them and making a few notes while you're doing that. So of the areas that you think are of most interest to you. And also do save the search for yourself. And you can download that report and then you get this summary, because I know it can be a little bit overwhelming. You think, what am I going to take out of all this sort of stuff? And how do we even report this stuff, right? So have a look at the summary that they've got on the report that you'll save for yourself, and you'll see how that is kind of boiled down into some kind of key areas.
Just to clarify on the DOI, are you suggesting we should be putting a DOI of a paper into anything we tweet or put on LinkedIn for it to be captured here?
Yeah, I am. Not just to be
Wow.
captured here, captured to put it out there. So what you're doing is you're being, obviously being very smart. You've done all your work and everything like that, but you want to lead the horse to the water. You want anybody who's out there, you really want them, you don't want them to have to Google it or whatever it is. You're going to put it in or to look up the journal. Make it, we know, let's hand in heart. People are Googling everything. They're not going into library databases and so on, looking up journals and things like that. So give them the DOI, you know.
Wow, okay.
And give it in the form of a link that people can click on, you know. So if you can do that, we are told by the Altmetric people that that is one of the major ways that you can increase your score and get people to pay attention to your work. When you do that, if they like it and they download it, it is much more likely that they're going to cite it.
Excellent, top tip. And look, I'd love, Lena, if we could have a session on Overton, because I think it'd be particularly helpful as well. But anyway, that's for another day. But thanks a million to you both for organising.
Thank you, Sarah. That was very interesting. Okay. So I think we have to go now or tune into the province. So thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.